Welcome back to Racing Direct, guys, the first on-camera episode. My name is Kyle. It's great to finally be talking to you guys. I will put the link to the Instagram somewhere on the screen here so you guys can actually know who I am. But it's really cool I can finally give you a face to put to the voice that you either agree or disagree with. I've wanted to do on-camera stuff for a long time now, so here we are. It's obviously not a professional studio, but it's going to do. All we're here for is to talk about one particular topic today, and that is Esteban Ocon, who is really out of sorts with Alpine after yet another incident with one of his teammates. Of course, we're talking about that collision with Gasly on the opening lap of this past weekend's Monaco Grand Prix. So make sure you hit subscribe, guys. Leave your comments down below, likes and shares. It really helps. Let's jump into it. So yes, we all saw Ocon dive bomb, send it up the inside of Gasly and Portier on the first lap. This incident almost kind of fell a little bit under the radar with all the craziness that was happening on the hill climb, with Perez crashing into the two Hasses, or Magnussen crashing into Perez, however you want to put it. That's not what we're talking about, though. We are talking about what happened a little further down the track with Ocon and Gasly. Now, this kind of had shades of Jenson Button going up the inside. I think it was Pascal Wehrlein who he turned upside down. We all know this was never a good place to overtake, especially on the first lap, and double especially when it's your teammate. This is something that you just do not do. Every Formula One driver knows this, except apparently Esteban Ocon. Now, yes, obviously this had severe consequences for Ocon and the team in the heat of the moment, because he had sustained tremendous damage from this wreck and he was not able to continue on with the Grand Prix. Gasly also was irate on the radio. He was convinced that his car was damaged. Thankfully, he managed to carry on and scored Alpine's first points of the season, but Ocon had a very different story. Now, during the red flag conditions, we heard some crazy reports coming out from Ted Kravitz at Sky Sports that Bruno Famin had already spoken to the French press and he was completely beside himself with Ocon. He was absolutely furious. He said there'd be severe consequences for his actions that were 100% his fault, that really cost the team. And some of these consequences could potentially result in a race suspension. Now, I've been watching Formula One since I could walk and talk, basically. I honestly can't remember off the top of my head the last time a team went out and suspended one of their drivers for an on-track incident, but that is just how angry Bruno Famin and the rest of the Alpine team really are with Esteban Ocon. Now, whether or not this is actually going to go through is a totally different story. I think personally that Bruno Famin was just extremely angry in the heat of the moment. I don't think this is something that he would actually go through with, but who really knows what's going on internally at Alpine. There could have been other stuff going on behind the scenes before this that we don't even know about, and this could be all building up into one crazy heated outburst from Famin where he's just had enough with Esteban Ocon. Now, it should also be noted that yes, Formula One has already handed out a penalty to Esteban Ocon. He is not shy from getting penalties. We all know the memes, 10 seconds for Ocon, no matter what happens on track. In this case, he is going to carry a 5-place grid penalty into the Montreal Grand Prix in a fortnight's time. Honestly, that maybe seems a little bit harsh considering the fact that he already sort of ruined his race anyway, and the driver that he hit managed to carry on. But when you have a track record like Esteban Ocon, it kind of starts to make more sense, and unfortunately he's built up quite the reputation of coming together with his teammates. If you look back to his Racing Point days before they were even Aston Martin, we all remember the Pink Panthers, he had quite a few coming together moments with Sergio Perez. Now, I'm not even saying that all of these are necessarily Esteban Ocon's fault, but when you have a common denominator in every single scenario like this one and this one, you kind of have to start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Now, when you think about the incidents between Sergio Perez and Esteban Ocon at Racing Point, the two that immediately spring to mind are, of course, Spa. I think it was actually Perez who might have pushed Ocon towards the pit wall. But then we also remember a massive collision they had in the opening lap of Singapore. And yes, Ocon never ever really sees eye to eye with many of his teammates. Then it shifted over to Alpine with Fernando Alonso. They had some skirmishes on track. And of course, we all remember that Esteban Ocon's one and only Grand Prix victory was really thanks to Fernando Alonso's incredible defensive driving against Lewis Hamilton that fended off the Mercedes driver for, I believe it was almost 20 laps, which is completely insane. One of the best defensive drives we've ever seen in modern times. That helped Ocon get his win. And how does he repay Fernando Alonso the next season? By defending against Alonso harder than he defended against anybody else the entire season. Now, I think the exact radio message that Fernando Alonso had after that incident was, "Never in my life have I ever seen someone defend as hard as Esteban just did on this opening lap." And of course, him blocking Alonso at the start and few corners after that as well allowed some of their rivals to blow by. So Ocon's crazy defensive driving against his own teammates actually burns his own team, and this has really built up a bad reputation for himself. Now we fast forward into modern times with Alpine and Pierre Gasly. Well, it's not gotten any better. We all heard before that Gasly even signed for Alpine that these two really didn't like each other. It went all the way back to their karting days, so we always knew that something was going to happen. And yes, it honestly didn't take too long. Remember last season, the two Alpines took each other out. I believe it was after a safety car restart, and I'm not even saying again that that was Ocon's fault necessarily, but again, the common denominator, you kind of have to factor that in. And then even just this year, they had another collision in Suzuka, I believe it was, once again on the opening lap. So the fact that Ocon is racing his own teammates harder than anybody else on track is really just a little strange. It's not too surprising to see why it drives his team principals absolutely crazy. You've already heard the rumors that Bruno Famin wants to suspend him for Montreal. Again, I don't know if he's actually going to go through with that, but this could really hurt Ocon's chances of retaining a seat for 2025. Alpine has a fantastic reserve driver waiting in the wings in Jack Doohan, and he is very eager to jump into the Formula One grid. I'm sure Alpine is very excited to get him into a car in the future as well, and at this point, with all of the mistakes that Ocon's been making, it looks like he'll be the one to be pushed aside once Doohan jumps into the team. And it's honestly kind of unfortunate because say what you will about Ocon, I think he's been the better of the two Alpine drivers so far this season. Yes, Gasly did have their first points in Monaco, but Ocon's been driving pretty well, to be honest. But these incidents are so self-inflicted, are such a problem. And although I don't think this race suspension rumor is actually going to go through, I'm pretty confident we will see him on track in Montreal. The fact that it's looming over his head and the possibility of it is there, and he knows his team principal is absolutely done with him, that could honestly make him change his driving styles on track, and this could actually help him. But I want to hear what you guys think of this. Do you believe that Bruno Famin will actually suspend Esteban Ocon for a future Grand Prix? It doesn't even have to be Montreal necessarily, it could be some point in the future. Or do you think this is all going to blow over? Or maybe you think that Ocon and Gasly are going to come together again and Esteban just hasn't learned his lesson? Leave those comments down below, guys. And of course, remember to share the videos and subscribe and like. It takes a couple of seconds and it really, really helps. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really enjoyed appearing on camera for the first time as well. I think it adds a lot more personality to the channel and it feels a lot better to connect with you guys this way than just sitting behind a bunch of moving pictures. So it's great to have you guys here. Thanks as always. We'll see you next time on Racing Direct.